What if the moment she stepped off the stagecoach was the moment her entire life shifted forever? The stagecoach lurched to a stop with a deep groan of wood and leather, throwing May Callahan forward one last time. Dust swirled around the wheels like a living thing, clinging to her dress and stinging her eyes. Through the grit-covered window, she saw the place she had spent 3 weeks traveling toward. Thornbrush. A few weathered buildings crouched against the endless Wyoming wind, looking more tired than dangerous. But May had learned that danger didn't need showy signs. Sometimes it hid in plain sight. The year was 1889, and May had left everything behind in Nebraska: her parents, graves, a failing farm, and the life she'd never quite fit into. All she carried now was a worn carpet bag, her mother's Bible, and a water rights deed her father had guarded with his dying breath. A deed she didn't yet understand, except that she needed it to survive. She stepped down, her boots sinking slightly into the hard earth. The October wind whipped her bonnet, tugging like it wanted to tear it away. The air smelled of sagebrush and cold, the kind of cold that hinted early snow might come down from the mountains any day. She didn't make it 2 steps before a voice snapped at her. "Papers!" Deputy Kellen Draper blocked her path, badge flashing in the sun like a warning. He was narrow in the face and narrow everywhere else, the kind of man who liked the power a tin star gave him. "I beg your pardon?" May forced her voice steady. "All newcomers get checked. Opium smugglers, disease carriers." His grin spread, yellowed by tobacco, especially when they're unaccompanied females. 2 rough-looking men lounged behind him, pretending not to listen but watching her every move. May had survived measles, poverty, and a long, lonely journey. She knew lies when she heard them, but she also knew she couldn't fight 3 armed men alone. Her hands shook slightly as she set down her bag and opened it. Draper's hands dove in like hungry crows, tossing aside her dresses, her sewing kit, her Bible. Then he found the oilcloth packet, the one thing she'd guarded with more fear than hope. "What's this, then?" He unwrapped it, revealing the yellowed papers covered in faded ink and old seals. "Those are personal documents," she said, her voice dipping colder. "Nothing that concerns the law." But Draper wasn't listening. His eyes gleamed. "Water rights to Little Copper Creek. That's Cattleman's League territory. It was my father's, Patrick Callahan. He filed them in '74. "Funny thing," Draper said, folding the papers and slipping them inside his vest. "I'll need to verify these with Judge Morrison. You can collect them in about 30 days. That deed is mine by law." Heat rose in May's chest. "You have no right." The 2 lounging men straightened. Hands drifted to their sides. The threat was unspoken, but loud. "Everything's the League's by law," Draper said. "Best you learn quick." May stood frozen, fear pushing against anger. She couldn't lose the deed. She couldn't let him walk away with it. Then a new voice cut through the dust. "Problem, Draper?" Quote. A tall man rounded the depot corner, leading 3 horses. He moved with an easy strength, like he was part of the land, solid, steady, shaped by wind and work. His clothes were dusty, his jaw rough with beard, and his gray eyes sharp enough to cut through every lie on the street. Eli Hart. "No problem," Draper said too quickly. "Just explaining ordinances to the lady." Eli's gaze moved over Draper, then over May and her scattered belongings. He didn't touch his gun, he didn't raise his voice, but May felt the entire moment shift. "Since when does checking papers mean going through a woman's possessions?" Eli asked, kneeling to pick up her mother's Bible. He lifted it with a gentleness that pulled something tight inside her chest. "This ain't your concern, Hart." "Maybe not." Eli tied his horses to the post, calm as a man preparing breakfast. "But I need a cook." "If the lady's looking for work, she's my concern." May understood the lifeline instantly. "Yes," she said, "I am seeking work." "Then we're done here." Eli began gathering her belongings, sliding them into her bag with deliberate care. Draper's laugh cut through the wind. Hard spur ain't lasting the winter anyway. League's already got plans for your water. Eli's jaw tightened. I use what my father used. Nothing more. Times change, Draper said. People who forget that get swept aside. The words were aimed at both of them. May climbed into the ranch wagon beside Eli, her hands trembling from everything she'd lost and everything she didn't yet know. As thornbrush faded behind them, the sun sank toward the mountains, throwing long shadows across the land. Thank you, she finally said. Don't thank me yet, Eli replied. Ranch work is hard. Winter's coming fast. So did I, she said softly. From Nebraska, alone. He glanced at her, studying the set of her jaw, the bruised hope in her eyes. What did Draper take? My father's water deed. That made him stiffen. The horses slowed as if they felt it too. That creek feeds my land, he said. Has for years. I'm not here to steal anything, May said quickly. I only wanted to lease the rights. Earn enough to start fresh. The League doesn't share, Eli said. Not water, not land, not anything. They were quiet until the ranch appeared. A handful of buildings standing strong against the wind. Smoke curled from the chimney, warm, alive. A place that looked like what home was supposed to be. Inside, Eli showed her the tidy kitchen, the stove, the small room off to the side. It wasn't much, but it was safe. And safety was something she hadn't felt in a long time. But that night, as she lay awake, listening to the wind claw at the windows, May knew this wasn't over. Draper had her deed. The League wanted the creek, and Thornbrush was a town where secrets rode faster than horses. Tomorrow she would begin fighting back, but tonight she had shelter, work, and a man whose steady eyes had seen her worth the moment she stepped off the coach. She didn't know yet how deeply their lives would entwine, or how fiercely they would burn. But the wind outside already carried hints of a storm. And not all storms came from the sky. Why did it feel like trouble was coming long before anyone could see it? 3 weeks had passed since May Callahan arrived at Hart Spur, and she had slipped into the rhythm of ranch life with surprising ease. She woke before dawn, lit the stove, and cooked hearty meals that warmed the house long before the sun rose. She mended clothes, kept the kitchen stocked, and worked alongside Ridge, the 14-year-old boy who helped Eli with the horses. Hard work suited her. It kept her hands busy and her thoughts clearer than they had been in years. But under the smooth routine, something darker simmered. Eli Hart slept less and worried more. May saw it in the tired shadows beneath his eyes when he sat at the kitchen table at dawn, studying his ledger. She heard it in Ridge's quiet comments about missing cattle, and she felt it in the sharp, watchful wind that never seemed to settle. The League was closing in. One cold morning, when the mountains were half hidden behind gray cloud, May found Eli already at the kitchen table with his coffee untouched. He kept studying the numbers in the ledger like he could force them to change. "Storm's coming," he said, without looking up. "I figured." May answered, setting a warm plate before him. "I'll pack extra food if you and Ridge are checking the horses." "Not necessary. I'll pack it anyway." A brief smile tugged at Eli's mouth. It was small, barely there, but May felt the warmth of it all the way to her chest. They worked together in quiet, easy rhythm. May kneaded biscuit dough while Eli pulled on his jacket. Ridge rushed through the door moments later, breathless, announcing that the horses were restless and pacing. Animals always sensed danger first. By noon, the men were out with the herd, and May was hauling water from the pump. The pump had been failing for days, each pull of the handle harder than the last. But today, as she pushed her sleeve up, she noticed something else: a broken seal, worn leather, and grit clogging the joint. A small failure today could become a disaster tomorrow. She fetched tools from the shed and knelt beside the pump in the dirt. Her father had taught her enough about machinery to recognize the problem. Hours passed as she filed metal smooth, replaced the leather seal, and reset the pump with careful precision. When she finally tested it, the water poured out smooth and strong. "Well, I'll be damned." May nearly dropped the wrench. Widow Joe stood behind her, hands on her hips and eyes amused. "Pardon my language," Joe said, "but it's not every day I see a lady in petticoats fixing a water pump." "Machines don't care what you wear," May answered, "just whether you know what you're doing." Joe chuckled. "Eli know you can do this?" Quote, "Hasn't asked." May brushed dirt from her hands. Smart woman. Men like to feel useful, though truth be told, that one needs less coddling than most. They sat together on the porch steps. Joe pulled a flask from her coat and offered it. May accepted a sip of whiskey that burned warm all the way down. "You knew Eli's father." May said it softly, unsure if she was prying. "Good man," Joe said. "Stubborn as stone. Loved this land. Eli carries that same weight, and maybe more." May waited. "You heard about Martha?" Joe continued. "Only that she died." Joe sighed. "She was helping with a difficult birthing at the Grayson Ranch." Rustlers struck. Posse chased them. Eli rode with them. Crossfire took her. Wrong place, wrong time. Her voice softened. He took the blame even though it wasn't his to carry. May felt something twist inside her. Not pity, but understanding. Loss changed people in deep, permanent ways. Before she could respond, the wind shifted. A cold, sharp gust swept down from the peaks. The storm was close. Hours later, near dusk, the door burst open. Eli and Ridge stumbled inside, soaked with snow, shivering from the wind's bite. They had lost 2 horses. May warmed stew on the stove and set water to boil, while Eli stripped off his wet coat. Ridge sat so close to the fire his boots nearly smoked. "Storm hit faster than we thought," Eli said, rubbing his arms. "Couldn't see 5 feet ahead." "You're home," May said. "That's what matters." Quote. Eli looked at her, and for a moment she saw something warm flicker behind his eyes, something she didn't dare name. Later, as May washed dishes by lamplight, she sensed Eli lingering in the doorway. A rare stillness held him. "You fixed the pump," he said. "It needed doing." "It did," he said softly. "You're capable." The compliment was simple, but from Eli Hart, it felt like something more, something close to trust. "Tomorrow," he said, "if the weather clears, I'll teach you how to shoot. I don't want to kill anything. You don't have to, but you should know how to protect yourself." His voice dropped lower, rougher. "In this place, being helpless is dangerous." The storm broke overnight, leaving the world covered in a glittering coat of snow. After breakfast, Eli brought her behind the barn, where hay bales made a practice wall. He placed a Colt 36 in her hands. "It's heavier than it looks," she said. "Most dangerous things are." He stood behind her, close enough that she felt the heat of him through her coat. He adjusted her stance, his hands firm but gentle on her hips, her shoulders, her wrists. "Breathe in," he murmured near her ear. "Hold." Squeeze on the exhale. His touch steadied her. Her heart, however, did not steady at all. Her first shot went wide. The second nearly struck the mark. By the 6th, she hit center. "Natural eye," Eli said. But when he stepped back, she felt the absence of his warmth like a sudden chill. Before she could say anything more, Ridge shouted from the yard. Riders were coming, 6 men on horseback cutting across the snow, moving fast. Draper led them. Eli stepped in front of May without thinking, his hand on his gun. "We're checking for rustlers," Draper said, all false politeness. "Need to verify your stock." "Check," Eli said coldly. "You'll find nothing wrong." But Draper wasn't there for cattle. He was there for May. "You got 30 days, miss," Draper said. "Time's almost up. Might want to think about handing me that deed peaceful-like." May met his gaze, steady. "The only thing I'll be handing you is a legal claim to property that belongs to me." Draper's smile vanished. "This valley is changing," Eli said. "Your league won't like how it ends." "We'll see," Draper muttered, riding off with his men through the snow. After they were gone, Eli's jaw tightened. "They push harder every time," he said, "and we'll push back." He looked at her then, really looked at her, with something fierce and protective simmering just beneath the surface. "May," he said, voice low, "you're stronger than you think." That night, after supper, as the fire crackled low, May sat at the kitchen table with ink and paper. Ridge watched over her shoulder as she wrote letters, careful, calculated letters, to people with power far beyond Thornbrush. "What are you doing?" the boy asked. "Fighting back," she said, "with the one weapon I have." Which is, quote, "the truth." The wind rose outside. The house creaked. Eli walked the porch, checking every shadow. And May knew the storm wasn't over. It was only beginning. What if everything they feared was about to come crashing down at once? The dust storm hit without warning. One moment, the afternoon sky over Hart Spur was wide and blue, and the next it turned into a wall of brown fury sweeping across the land. The wind roared like a beast let loose, choking the air with grit and bending the cottonwoods nearly sideways. May had been tending the small vegetable patch, her pride, her promise of spring, when she saw the horizon vanish. Her egg basket dropped from her hands. "Eli!" she shouted, but the wind swallowed her voice. He was already running from the barn, coat snapping, eyes sharp with fear. "Inside!" he yelled, pointing toward the house. "Get in, May!" But before she could take 3 steps, she saw something far worse. The corral gate had smashed open in the wind. Horses panicked, kicking and screaming, scattering into the storm. The pregnant mares, next year's survival, bolted in every direction. May didn't think. She just moved. She ran to the barn, grabbed a bridle, and whistled the sharp 2-note call Ridge had taught her. Through the swirling chaos, the young paint mare she'd been working with stumbled toward her, trembling but willing. Ridge appeared like a ghost in the blowing dust. "What are you doing?" he shouted. "Saving the herd!" May swung onto the mare bareback, skirts bunching awkwardly. "Show me the box canyon! Now!" Ridge hesitated a split second, then nodded and kicked his horse forward. Together, they plunged into the storm. The world turned into a nightmare of sand and wind. May's eyes watered until mud streaked her cheeks. She could barely see Ridge ahead, but she followed the sound of his whoops and calls. Half English, half Shoshone, his voice steady in the wind. Then she saw movement. Shadows running blind through the storm. The herd. Caesar, the lead stallion, was heading straight for the ravine, a 50-foot drop waiting to swallow them all. "Ridge!" May shouted, but the wind tore her voice apart. She didn't wait for help. She veered hard, aiming the mare in front of Caesar's path. Pulling Eli's red bandana from her pocket, she whipped it through the air. The flash of color caught Caesar's eye. He faltered, reared, then wheeled away. The herd followed. Ridge was already on the other side, pushing them left with practiced shouts. Together, they funneled the terrified animals toward the hidden box canyon, a natural trap with walls too steep to climb. May's thighs burned from gripping the horse. Her hands went raw from clutching the reins. But she didn't stop. They got nearly all the herd into the canyon before the worst of the storm slammed them again. They dismounted, legs shaking, and helped each other pile brush and rope across the narrow entrance, enough to keep the herd inside. "2 missing!" Ridge yelled. "Better than losing them all," May said, breathless. They huddled with the horses, pressed against the canyon wall, wind screaming above them. It felt like hours before it finally eased. When they led the herd home, May's legs trembled with exhaustion. Ridge's face was pale beneath the dust. But they were alive. Eli stood by the ruined corral, his coat whipping in the wind. Relief washed over his face when he saw them. 22 head accounted for," Ridge called. "Miss May rode like a warrior." "Like a fool," Eli said, but his voice shook with something deeper. "You could have been killed. So could the mares. Horses can be replaced. You can't." His words sent heat through May's chest, through places she wasn't ready to name. Then he saw her eyes, red from dust, and stepped closer. "You're hurt," he said. "Just dust." "Don't rub," she whispered as he reached toward his face. "You'll scratch your eyes. Sit." She pulled him onto the porch and washed the grit from his eyes with a warm cloth. The closeness made her heart stumble, his breathing slowed beneath her touch. When she finally stepped back, Eli caught her wrist. "That was brave," he said. "Foolish, but brave. I'm learning those things go together out here." His thumb brushed her wrist before he let go, and the warmth of that small touch traveled through her like fire. Night fell fast. While they worked to settle the horses, a rider approached, Josiah Briggs, their loud and loyal neighbor. His hay barn had burned. 3 starting points. No accident. League's escalating, Josiah growled. Crawley wants you scared. May felt a cold certainty settle inside her. "Then let's stop reacting," she said. "Let's fight smart." Inside the house, she spread papers across the table. Her letters, her records, every suspicious action she had tracked. "I've been documenting everything," she said. "Dates, times, threats. It's all here." Josiah whistled. "Girl's got more brains than both of us." Eli studied the ledger. "This is good, but we need more." Something they can't ignore. "Then I'll go to the courthouse tomorrow," May said. "Look through land records. If the League's stealing water, the paperwork will show it." Eli froze. "Draper will be watching for you." "He won't see me. Not if I enter through Widow Joe's side door." Josiah grinned. "And I'll distract Draper. Been itching to tell him what I think of him anyway." Plans formed quickly. Ridge would create an excuse at the livery. Josiah would start a public argument. May would slip into the courthouse unseen. But late that night, May found something unexpected in the barn. A deerskin treaty, marked with symbols she couldn't read. Ridge appeared, face shadowed. "That belonged to my great-uncle," he said softly. "John Otza, peace chief, made water agreements before paper law took over." "Water rights?" May whispered. "Shared water, shared land, promises made between your father, Eli's father, and my people." Hope sparked inside her chest. "Would your grandmother speak on this?" Quote, "Maybe," Ridge said. "She doesn't trust easy." "I'm not asking for easy, just honesty." Outside, thunder rolled. A storm was building. Not outside this time, but in thornbrush. And May knew she would be at the center of it. The next night, everything unraveled. May woke to the sound of horses crying out, a sharp, terrified sound. She grabbed her Colt and ran to the window. 6 masked figures moved through the yard. One man poured something into the water trough. Another sprinkled powder around the salt lick. Poison. May ran outside, Colt raised. "Get off our land," she shouted, firing into the air. Eli was already there, rifle steady. Ridge blew a carved whistle, 3 loud blasts that echoed across the yard. The herd responded instantly. Stampeding through the open gate Ridge had unlatched, the men scattered in panic. Horses thundered across the yard, forcing the intruders to flee. One man stayed behind. He poured a bottle into the trough. May ran, swung the butt of the Colt, and smashed his wrist. The bottle dropped and hissed as the liquid burned into the dirt. He struck her across the face. Pain burst bright. May fell but kept her grip on the gun, pointing it at his chest. "Try it," she said through gritted teeth. He ran. Hours later, after scrubbing troughs and hauling fresh water, the first light of dawn crept over the ridge. Then Ridge rode into the yard. His horse came back. Ridge did not. A note hung from the saddle horn. Eli tore it open. "Trade the ranch deed for the boy. Midnight. Skeleton Rock." "Come alone." May's heart stopped. "No," she whispered. "No, this is my fault." Eli grabbed her shoulders. "May, we're not trading anything," she said fiercely. "They took him in daylight. People saw. That's kidnapping. That's federal." Eli's voice was harsh with fear. "You want to gamble his life? I want to save him and the ranch. Together." Within minutes, Josiah was riding to gather men. Widow Joe set off to alert contacts. May wrote letters fast. One to the territorial newspaper, one to the governor, one to a federal judge. By nightfall, a dozen allies hid among the rocks at Skeleton Rock. Eli rode out alone. May followed in the shadows. Draper held Ridge at gunpoint. More armed men crouched in ambush on the ridge above. May saw the trap instantly. So did Ridge. He tapped his fingers. Signals he'd learned from Eli. More men. Hidden. May raised her Colt. "Stop!" she shouted. "Federal marshals are on the way. Every move you make is being photographed." Flash. Lena Birch's camera lit the canyon like lightning. Gunfire erupted. Eli Dove grabbed Ridge and hauled him into the saddle. Draper fired. Eli's horse went down. The two tumbled hard. May fired into the air to draw attention as Josiah's men attacked from the ridge. Bodies scrambled for cover. Draper raised his gun at May. Eli, bleeding, fired first. His bullet took Draper's gun clean out of his hand. Silence fell. Draper screamed, clutching his broken fingers. Lights flickered on the ridge. Townspeople were arriving. Witnesses. Too many to silence. "It's over," May said, helping Ridge cut his bonds. "No," Draper hissed. "It's just beginning." But for the first time, May wasn't afraid, because Eli was alive. Ridge was safe. Their friend stood beside them, and justice, real justice, was coming. May knelt beside Eli, pressing her shawl to his bleeding forehead. "You stupid man," she whispered, tears threatening. "I told you to trust the plan." Eli caught her hand despite the pain. "And I did," he murmured. "Because I trust you with my life, May Callahan." As dawn rose over Skeleton Rock, May looked at the man she loved, the boy she'd risked everything for, and the town now standing behind them. The war wasn't over. But the tide had turned, and May Callahan was done being afraid.